Hi everyone, welcome to Sophos MDR ThreatCast. My name is Greg Idden, security strategist here for the MDR service. Joining me today is Jordan Honest from Threat Intelligence and also Morgan Dabosky from Threat Intelligence. We've got Mark Parsons from Threat Hunt and we've got Sean Gallagher from Threat Research. Covering the usual kind of topics today, so we're going over threat landscape with Jordan, then we'll go through the observed threat activity with Morgan. Mark will take us through some threat hunts, and Sean's going to take us through a pretty interesting review. So make sure you stick around for the excellent review. We'll be talking about something quite big that I was read into about 5 years ago and could never say a thing about it. So now it's gone public. It's a pretty cool story. I'll then take us through with the MDR Most Unwanted, and then we'll take Q&A at the end. But as always, if you've got a question, don't hold on till the end. There's a Q&A panel on the right. Just jump into there, put in your question, and what we'll do is I'll either answer it live, so I'll step in, ask the person to speak to the question. We'll answer it via text in the chat, or we'll just hold it to the end of the session and we'll do it in the Q&A. Yes, this is being recorded. I'm sure this will get asked in about 5 minutes or so, as it always does. Yes, this is being recorded, and the references and everything will be uploaded to the Sophos MDR community channel roughly in the next 24 hours or so. But that's all we need to do. Let's carry on now. Let's pass over to Jordan. So Jordan, do you want to just join the stage? Let's cover the threat landscape. Alrighty.
Hey, welcome everyone. Let's dive into it. Threat landscape. So starting off, let's start in vulnerability land. There were actually a lot of critical vulnerabilities that dropped this month. We actually didn't have time to cover all of them. We just kind of went with a selection here. There's a bit of a theme, see if you can guess it by the end. But, you know, be aware that there was a lot that dropped this month, so do some due diligence. Make sure that you've got everything patched for everything that's critical that came out in the past month. So diving into it, Palo Alto, PAN-OS products. This is the one getting kind of all the attention right now. This is in the login panel for the PAN-OS, operating system for their PAN-OS products. If this is exposed to the internet, it's vulnerable. This is an authentication. This is two vulnerabilities. One is an authentication bypass. The other one is this is a remote code execution vulnerability. CVSS 9.3 and 6.9 respectively. These are already noted as exploited in the wild. Official patches are available, but this is the one that's kind of getting a lot of attention right now. Moving right along, Citrix virtual apps and desktop server. This is in the recording feature, if I'm not mistaken. This is two vulnerabilities that can get chained together: improper privilege management and deserialization of untrusted data. When you chain the two together, it results in remote code execution. According to the Shadow Server Foundation, this is exploited in the wild already. They are seeing exploitation attempts. Hot fixes are available. You'll note that I didn't include a CVE or a set of CVE numbers for these vulnerabilities. That is because Watchtower, the group that discovered these vulnerabilities and punted them over to Citrix, they came out with a write-up and made it very clear that they think this is a unauthenticated remote code execution chain. Citrix came out later and said, no, that would require authentication. This has not been independently verified who's right, so I just didn't include CVSS numbers. Moving right along, D-Link. They had a number of end-of-life devices that had vulnerabilities discovered long after they went EOL. The one that I went with here, there were others, is CVE 2024-109-14. This is a command injection vulnerability, remote command injection vulnerability, CVSS 9.2. Again, according to Shadow Server, this is seeing exploit attempts in the wild already. And yeah, like I said, this is noted as an end-of-life product, so there will be no patches made available. It's literally just remove the device and find something new. Okay, finishing off our selection of critical vulnerabilities this month, VMware vCenter or vCenter Server. This is a heap overflow vulnerability that results in remote code execution, CVSS at 9.8. This was originally patched back in September. It was discovered that that patch wasn't quite complete, so they came out with a new patch in October. But even then, by the time November rolled around, this had actually been added to the SysAkev database. So that one is being exploited in the wild already. So if you couldn't guess the theme, it is services and products that are exposed to the internet at the network edge that are, released within the past month and already under active exploitation. As always, have some advice for you guys. Always follow manufacturer best practices. For example, PanOS does not recommend you expose that amend panel to the internet. So that is one way to protect yourself from that vulnerability. Apply official products and updates, always the best policy, and check for end-of-life products. D-Link made that pretty clear this month. Okay, moving right along. Moving on to notable breaches. We had new MoveIt breach victims drop this month, which is a little bit strange. If you think back to May of this year, when the Clop ransomware group had been on a tear, exploiting MoveIt servers to steal people's data off of their externally exposed MoveIt servers and then extort them online. There were many, many victims named in there. And apparently we just had new ones drop. So this user by the name of Nameless on breach forums released data of previously unknown victims of the 2023 MoveIt breach. My apologies. So in total, there were 25 organizations with their sensitive data released. This is all in line with that May 2023 timeline. Several of the victims have already confirmed the legitimacy of the leaked data. This includes Amazon. I think Delta was also another one that confirmed the legitimacy of the data. Amazon in particular, that was about 2.9 million employee records that dropped. And the person wasn't even charging any money for it. This is just made publicly available on this breach forum. So in the end, a lot of unanswered questions here. Is this person related to Clop? And did they get the data that way? Did they conduct their own attacks that were totally separate of Clop? Were these victims that paid Clop to have their data erased and not be named as a victim? And then this person is now stabbing them in the back? We don't know. There's a lot of questions that we just don't have answers to on this one. So, key takeaways here: if you are the victim of a ransom and you pay the ransom to have your information deleted and not get leaked on the internet, you really don't have any guarantee that that information won't still end up on the internet. So just be aware of that if you wind up in that situation. Also, when it comes to breach data, use services like Have I Been Pwned to find out whether you are affected by a data breach. I've included that link in the more reading section slide at the end of the slide deck here. Go have a look at that if you are winding up in that situation, or if you're just curious. And if you are the victim of a data breach, exercise extra vigilance. Talk to your bank, talk to your financial institutions, see what protections you can get to protect yourself if your information has been breached online. Okay, moving right along onto notable news. The Sophos ransomware operator, apparently the ringleader of the Sophos ransomware organization, has been arrested and extradited to the States. So South Korean authorities arrested and extradited Evgeny Pestitsin, 42, a Russian national, for allegedly running the Sophos ransomware operation. Under different aliases, Pestitsin is alleged to have built a network of affiliates to carry out ransomware attacks. You might recognize the names like 8base or Faust a bit better than Phobos, but that's just because Phobos operated under a number of different names under their different affiliates in this network. So really, this kind of arrest wouldn't happen if people weren't reporting these breaches and these ransomware attacks to authorities. That's what gets it on authorities' radar, and that's what increases the priority for authorities to investigate and go arrest these people. So if you are the victim of a ransomware attack like this, there are a number of different organizations you can report the ransomware incident to. For the UK, I know Greg has mentioned the NCSC for the UK, from the UK government. There's also the FBI has set up a separate portal for reporting ransomware incidents on their website. Canadian CCCS, Australian ACSC, pretty much any country out there has got some kind of CERT team that you can report these to and start getting the ball moving on getting these people arrested. So on that note, let's go have a look at the ransomware leak sites and the analysis. So new group I hadn't recognized before, Bansha, had jumped a lot in kind of the overall rankings for the month. El Dorado was also quite up in the rankings this month. Inc. Ransomware up in the rankings. Lockbit, Sarcoma, and that 8base that is Phobos based, those all had no posts on their leak site this month, their leak sites this month. So obviously all of those groups had fallen in the rankings quite a bit this month. Looking at the frequency, you can notice an outlier at the top end of that scale. Ransom Hub is very much the most voluminous player out there right now, rounded out for the top 3 by Play and Keylin. Taking a look at the posting frequency, you can see the Ransom Hub had a very consistent month, whereas others were a bit more hit and miss. So yeah. On that note, that's it for Threat Landscape. I'm going to be turning things over to Morgan here for the next section.
Perfect. Thank you, Jordan. Hey, everyone. How's it going? Let's roll right into observed threat activity. Starting off with our most active list. So the most active ransomware from this month, though Jordan just said that Ransom Hub had a very steady month of a lot of postings, the most frequently seen in our customer base was Akira. Now, this is interesting because if you remember, I think it was last month or maybe the month before us talking about this, but in late October, Akira's data leak site was kind of struggling to stay online. And some people were debating if a rebranding or a shutdown was coming of Akira. I think we talked about, Fog and Frag ransomware as having a lot of overlap with Akira and possibly being involved in some sort of rebrand. But however, like 2 weeks ago, there was a huge surge in posts on Akira's data leak site where they claimed an unprecedented number of 32 new victims in one day. In our customer base, Akira continues to be one of the most active ransomware. In fact, November has had the highest volume of Akira cases that we've seen in a single month. So definitely something to be aware of and something that we've been keeping very close tabs on, especially given that we were one of the first to report on Akira ransomware and its targeting of customers. Moving on, one more ransomware family that you may not have heard of that I just wanted to mention really quickly is Globe Imposter ransomware. Now, this ransomware has been in existence since around 2016. It's usually distributed through phishing emails, but over the years, Globe Imposter has evolved with new versions. It's interesting that we're seeing this one pop up. Reporting on Globe Imposter is pretty sparse. I don't think it's been reported on since around 2023, but we've seen actually 2 cases related to Globe Imposter in the last month. So that is definitely one that we are keeping close tabs on to see if there will be an increase in the number of Globe Imposter attacks in the next couple of months. Pivoting over to the most active malware by far this month was LumaStealer. Now we're going to talk more about LumaStealer here in a second, but other frequently seen malware includes Grixpa. And Grixpa is a custom network scanning tool that was actually developed by the Play ransomware group. And it's used by Play ransomware affiliates to basically enumerate all users and computers in a victim network. So we often see that deployed alongside Play ransomware or as a precursor to Play ransomware. What's more than that, we also have web shells, which includes basically all generic web shells not yet classified under public reporting. And then also I wanted to comment on Net Support Rat. Net Support Rat is based on Net Support Manager, which is a legitimate tool that's frequently abused by threat actors in ways very similar to a lot of remote management tools like TeamViewer, and basically can provide full and complete control over a target device. So those are the ransomware and the malware families that we are tracking in our customer base so far. Now let's zoom into a couple different case studies. So the first case study that we're going to take a look at is a new threat activity cluster that we track as Stack 5811. Now, this cluster is characterized by the use of email-based social engineering to deploy a backdoor called More Eggs and establish initial access. So this cluster has actually been reported on before, and it's known to overlap with the financially motivated threat group known as Fin6 or Storm 0538. For the primary delivery vector, the actors basically send fake job applicant emails. So primarily we've seen this target like talent recruitment agencies, but it also is known to target retail and many other sectors as well. But basically they attach a fake resume to that email that's actually a malicious zip archive containing a link file carrying the More Eggs backdoor. So they use fake websites and web-hosted resumes to add credibility to their phishing lures. And it's pretty likely that they're using AI to generate these resumes and this phishing content, which enables them to micro-target specific organizations. Zooming in on the malware itself, More Eggs, if you have not heard of it before, it's kind of a curious name, but it's a JavaScript backdoor that is known to download and execute additional payloads like info stealers and ransomware. We do believe that this activity is linked to ransomware as a service activity, but luckily the intrusions were detected and blocked by Sophos before they could escalate into ransomware infections. So we can't confirm if or which ransomware it was leading to. However, we did see some post-compromise activity. And that includes the use of Impacket's WMI exec for lateral movement. They were seen creating scheduled tasks with names like VMware tools and Windows Update for persistence. We saw the use of Storage Explorer for discovering Azure blob storage. And we also saw a handful of data exfil and transfer tools, including WinRAR and 7-Zip for data staging and FileZilla for data transfer. In terms of takeaways here, the initial activity actually occurred on a device which at the time of the investigation was not protected by MDR. And so these kind of blind spots prevent MDR from responding more promptly and stopping the activity before it spreads to other devices in the network. So ideally, you want to have as few unmanaged assets and thus as few blind spots in your estate as possible. Moving on to our second case study here. So over the past month, as I've mentioned, we've seen a proliferation in cases involving Luma stealer activity. Now, as a little bit of background, Luma Stealer is an info stealer available as a malware as a service, and it specializes in stealing sensitive data like passwords, browser information, and crypto wallet details. And it's been found that recent Luma Stealer deployments are originating from fake CAPTCHA prompts. And as Mark will talk about in just a second, our lovely hunt team led a threat hunt on Luma Stealer deployment techniques, specifically the use of social engineering and fake CAPTCHA sites to lure users into pasting a malicious PowerShell encoded command into the Windows Run interface. So as you can see in the screenshot, when you click on I'm not a robot, it basically prompts you to paste some code in the Windows Run window, which, I will note is a known technique used in past Luma Stealer campaigns. But what that PowerShell command does is it connects to the URL hosting content and executes, which downloads the Luma Stealer executable and executes an embedded auto IT script that can lead to things like browser credential collection and data exfiltration. And Mark will get more into this, but in terms of advice, overall, just beware of fake security checks like fake CAPTCHAs and, educate users to avoid pasting into the Windows run dialog because, since the Windows run dialog can execute system commands, scripts, or programs directly and often without confirmation, there is a high potential for command injection and for attackers to try to take advantage of. So, definitely try to avoid that, especially when they want you to paste an encoded PowerShell command. That would definitely be a red flag. But moving on into our last observed threat activity, and that is related to a new threat cluster that we're tracking as Stack 1171. Now, we first saw this stack in early November, and we first discovered them when Sophos endpoint behavioral rules blocked credential dumping activity targeting an organization in Israel. And so when we took a closer look at the activity, we were able to break it down and find indicator in TTP overlap with the Iranian-aligned APT known as Muddy Water or TA450. Specifically, we were able to find overlap with a report that Proofpoint had released on this actor. But initial access was gained through a phishing email pointing the user to open a shared document on OneHub and download a zip file called New Program ICC Ltd. And this zip archive contained a compressed installer file for the legit remote monitoring and management tool, Atera. And once Atera was installed, they used Atera remote run commands to execute a PowerShell script with the goal of dumping credentials and creating a backup file of the system registry hive. And other post-compromise activity in Atera included things like multiple domain enumeration commands, establishing an SSH tunnel, and running an obfuscated PowerShell command to download another legitimate RMM tool known as Level. And as I mentioned, the credential dumping activity was detected and blocked by Sophos behavioral rules. But general advice here would be to, implement application control for any RMM tools that are not being actively used by your organization. And I will mention that if you're interested in learning more details about this activity, we did publish a mini blog/social post on this Stack 1171 activity that we've linked in the slide deck. So definitely recommend checking that out if you are interested. But with that being said, I will now punt it over to Mark to talk about threat hunting.
So, folks, the first hunt I'm going to discuss today is Program Compatibility Assistant, or PCA-Lua Indirect Command Execution. So this is a particularly intriguing login. It's been around for quite some time. Our hunt hypothesis, right, because we like to do behavior-based hunts here, and this is our thought of what evil looks like, is that threat actors are going to use this LOLBIN, or living off the land binary, to perform indirect command execution and bypass controls around command interpreters like command.exe or PowerShell. So this is, again, threat actors always trying to find their way in no matter what type of control we generate. The way that we have identified this activity was actually through a set of MDR operations IR events. We were able to tie together 2 different IRs from over an 8-month span between them, diving into some EVTX files to identify that the threat actor had moved actually laterally to an unmanaged asset and then moved yet again to another unmanaged asset at that time. If you're sensing a theme here of unmanaged assets being a problem, you are 100% correct. And I very much so implore you to ensure that all of your assets are enrolled so that we can protect you as fully and completely as we can. So back to our hunt about what PCA-Lua does. And beyond that, right, how do we make sure that we're controlling this too? I want you to make sure that you're looking for the executions of PCA-Lua within the system context, because the way that PCA-Lua functions or operates is it's going to identify an execution typically from user space, where it's going to say, okay, this program is really old and I need to help you make sure it runs. Out of this hunt opportunity, we were able to create 3 new detection identifications. We identified 3 different customers that were impacted and then 5 different unique systems. Now, again, PCA-Lua, this is that LOLBIN I was discussing. It's able to help old programs, and I mean like Windows Vista old, execute older programs than that. So this has been around for quite some time. It's been abused for quite some time as well. And so this is actually what we identified, right? So this is a little very cheap homebrewed diagram of what the process activity looked like. And so I made this, so if you have shade you want to cast at it, muddy my name, please. But basically, you can see service host in the top left there, causing the execution through a scheduled task, where then it executed PCA Lua.exe, and in that execution, it loaded the backdoor executable, that PGC file.exe. Now you can see at the far right of that red box, that's the actual C2 server, right? That's syncdp.fullgraph.com.br, just going to that orange blob, which is just the URI hosted on that red box. Now you'll notice there are a bunch of other communications in purple. Well, that's because what this executable will do is it'll ping out to places like Reddit or Bing, and to make sure that it's actually has and maintains network connectivity. And so when we did our hunt, as you can see here, we use the -A flag very specifically. And that brings us into what we're actually going to be hunting for, where we see them actually executing from fake app data directories. And we're going to whitelist or state that anything that has the uninstall string in that command line is actually benign, right? So that's going to be, again, available for you all to hunt on your own, though we've already done this for you. And again, we are generating detections and monitoring for these things already on your behalf. So if you're a Sophos customer, specifically within MDR, you're all set. But please, by all means, make sure that you're protected. We want to make sure that everyone's as informed as possible. Now, on to the other hunt. This was this Luma Stealer initial access item that we discussed. Oh, actually, excuse me. Sorry, folks. I just want to jump back. One of the more exciting things that we identified from this hunt specifically is the creation of stack 6565. So that 6 at the very front means it's an unknown identification of their motivations. And so while we did see this threat actor overlap heavily with what Trend Micro is calling Earth Capri and indicating them to be a nation state actor or potentially nation state, we are not comfortable with making that assessment right now with the data that we have available to us. So we have seen them messing around in a few different environments, and we are onto them, but we did generate our own stack, and we are tracking this threat actor. We do have quite a bit of overlap in terms of the actual curl executions, as well as the different command service-based executions that were specifically identified. So very strongly likely that it's the same actor, but we want to make sure that we're seeing and making our assessments based on the data that we see within our customer base. Sorry about that. On to the next item, that Windows run command, right? So this is what Morgan talked about with Luma Stealer. And so what we believe with our hunt hypothesis is that threat actors are leveraging social engineering to lure end users into executing encoded PowerShell or hidden PowerShell from the run dialog. We identified this way back in, I want to say the beginning of October through Open Source Intelligence as news media. Our mechanism for hunting was actually just searching. So creating that whitelisting by saying, okay, we see this happening all the time. We know that this is benign. We're going to say this is okay. The way that we can control this and protect our customers, right, is that we would like you to either look into setting GPOs for the set execution policy to require PowerShell scripts to be signed, or block users via the application control. Theoretically, you could do both. I'd prefer that. Where you're able to block PowerShell for specific user bases or segments within your customer base, like allow your administrative users to have it, but not everyone to have it. Just a thought. Finally, there's user education, right? Because again, this is coming in through social engineering, where they're being asked to go and copy paste a full block of PowerShell code into the run dialog. So maybe we can discuss with our end users that don't just believe everything that you read. Try to validate and assume that what you're doing makes some sense and there's a business cause and need for this to occur. Out of this hunt, we've generated 2 different detection opportunities. We've identified 35 different customers impacted, as well as 35 different machines. Now, this is what was used to be happening. What we're going to talk about is what things have evolved into. So you can see here that encoded PowerShell command is being copy-pasted from that fake captcha page, and then it's being pasted right into that run box, and it's encoded. As you can see here, stage 1 PowerShell is no longer encoded. So it is now different. The threat actor has, and this is what everyone's reported on, is that it's all sitting there and it's encoded. It's no longer being done like that. This execution is from the last 5 days. So this is as hot and fresh as you can plausibly get. So it is no longer being encoded at all. The way that it's working is that first PowerShell script up at the very top, stage 1 PowerShell, with that in.txt file is being pasted into the run dialog and executed. That will then cause that second PowerShell execution to fire. That file.exe in purple there will then be dropped down into the app.exe, and then a Trojanized application with an embedded auto IT script is then deployed to the machine. That embedded auto IT script maintains the Luma Stealer payload. And that is where the actual credential theft is going to occur. Now, how do we detect this? Well, we're going to want to, so the run dialog box is actually going to be executed from a process-based perspective as coming through from explorer.exe. And because we want to make sure that we're looking for all the different types of executions or variants of this attack, we're going to look for command.exe, PowerShell.exe, or PWSH, which is an alternative name for PowerShell. And then we're going to look for, in that command line, the -EC or encoded aspect, or we're going to look for the -W flag, which is the window is going to be hidden. And this is how we've been able to identify all of those undetected attacks firing off. Now, we do have this as a normal detection item already. We also have the URI aspect being hunted for already, but these are coming in as a level 5 detection, so non-case creating, and we want to make sure that we're firing on every single possible avenue for detection and prevention. So with that being said, I believe I'm going to hand things off to Sean. Thanks so much, folks. One second. He's just going to come onto the stage any minute now. And I have to say, this is a fantastic article. If you have not read it before or seen it, I highly recommend. Hey, Sean, how are you?
Grab the screen focus as I was getting ready to click the button to join you. I'm Sean Gallagher with Sophos XOps, and I want to talk you through some of the research we recently published about a group of attacks we called Pacific Rim. First, let's go over some of the things we've got going on this month. We've got a lot of threat research news going on. Some of it from XOps, including this article that we posted earlier this month on this particular bootloader attack using a very specific search as a lure to get victims to download bootloader. Specifically, the question was, are Bengal cats legal in Australia? We identified that malware download and dove into it. Folks from the MDR ops team in Australia and Japan took a hard look at it. I helped them along with it. It's a very good example of how search engine poisoning can be used to deliver malware, not just bootloader, but many types of malware. Also, we posted a social and also a short blog on the Veeam exploit, which we've been seeing getting used by various ransomware operators, including a new one that we found called Frag. This is something we think is one of those, as my colleague Matt Wixie referred to them, junk gun type ransomwares, where it's developed by a fairly basic skilled developer with maybe a computer science student level of understanding of code, and it is used when they don't have access to other ransomware as a service tools. We found that they were among 3 different ransomwares we saw exploiting the Veeam exploit, along with exploits of VPN appliances. Also, we had our November Patch Tuesday, which was once again pretty big with 14 product families affected. Take a look at that. And another MDR operation that we highlighted this month, we've been tracking Muddy Water, an Iranian threat actor, and we've seen 2 attempted attacks, both blocked by MDR by behavioral, but that is ongoing. Muddy Water has been targeting both Israeli and U.S. organizations. They're using the Atera remote machine management platform. It's legitimate software with hacked emails as the registration for trial accounts. So let's go on to Pacific Rim. We call this Pacific Rim for various reasons, largely because a lot of the activity focused on organizations around the Pacific, but also because it is of the scale of a Guillermo del Toro movie. This was an over 5-year investigation. It began with an attack on our subsidiary in India, and that was the only attack directly on Sophos. But for the next 5 years, we saw a number of attacks, starting with the Asnarok attack that we blogged about back in 2021, where they did broad attacks on Sophos firewalls at customer sites in an attempt to take them over. Each of these cases that we talk about in this report, they've all been documented in the past. The main piece of new news that comes out of this report is that we managed to document a Chinese adversarial development program where researchers were doing R&D using our routers, our firewalls, to develop exploits. And that went from the mass attack mode early on to later on being much more targeted, using much more stealthy malware, living off the land, using Java library exploits embedded into existing Java libraries in our product and changing those, and exploiting other vulnerabilities from other vendors, including an OpenXSL exploit, which we reported. We had, pardon me again, we were able in this case to track these attacks and get more intelligence on what was going on with the attack development by deploying patches to our product in a targeted way. So we deployed implants, which allowed us to observe development behavior on the adversary's hardware that they had purchased, and track the development of those, as well as getting out patches early to our devices to block any new exploits that were being developed. One of the key things about this whole episode, this whole 5-year sequence of attacks, is we've wanted to discuss the importance of staying patched on devices and the importance of managing the life cycle of devices. End-of-life devices and unpatched devices remain a significant threat in cybersecurity. Joe Levy, our CEO, refers to this as digital detritus. We have had a number of recent cases where unpatched devices, including the Veeam and also the D-Link vulnerability that was mentioned earlier in this webcast, have created an opportunity for attackers to leverage those vulnerabilities that have been unpatched or are end-of-life products and carry out ransomware attacks and other types of cybercrime. So it's very important to stay on top of patches. If you look at, for example, our recent research on Veeam on the Stack 5881, which I mentioned earlier, that's another example that we continue to reach out to our customers who are running end-of-life products. The CyberRoam product line was end-of-lifed after we discovered a major vulnerability that could not be patched, and we still see that product in use, and with a number of former customers who no longer pay for support. We also see other versions of our product that have had the firmware upgraded that are still running on older versions of firmware. We continue to try to outreach to the customers who are running those, but it's very important going forward to check to make sure that you have a current patch level on your firewall products or any product that you have that is touching the internet, and to ensure that you're not going to be targeted by scannable vulnerabilities that will be used by either cyber criminals or, in this case, state actors. And with that, I'll go through the timeline we had in the report. So as I mentioned, the first attack was back in December of 2018. That was what we call the Cloud Sniffer attack. That targeted the actual CyberRoam offices in India. Azenrock was in 2020. And we ID'd in April 2020, we ID'd that there was a device that there was development of code that was used in that attack. And that sort of cued into our ongoing investigation and led to the development of the implant we used to identify routers where malicious development was happening. Then there was a bookmark attack, which attacked a feature in the firewall to create bookmarks. That exploit was dealt with, and then we deployed in July of 2020 the implant for the first time, and we found devices that were used to create those exploits. And And in August 31st of 2020, we assisted another organization in assisting the Tibetan organization after a cyber attack on them. And we found a number of things that were used that were related to some of the research we had seen being done at these adversarial organizations in China. Then in November of 2020, we had the 0-day attack on the CyberRoam devices, which led to the end of life of those devices. Interestingly enough, in March of 2021, just before we had an attack, one of the developers of exploits actually cashed in for a bug bounty the exploit that they were about to use in the next attack, which we found through a search, a retro hunt based on the bug submission. Then we had in April 22, we had the OpenSSL bug, which we reported to OpenSSL. That led to blocking a number of attacks before they happened, as did the discovery of a UEFI bootkit in August of 22 that was being developed to deploy onto our firewalls to beat reboots and reflashes of the hardware and have a persistent backdoor installed on them. We never saw that deployed in the wild. Then the adversary moved more towards a covert channels, as we call it, attack. It was much more focused attacks where they used specific exploits that allowed them to create direct connection, create implants, create backdoors on targeted systems. And as time went forward from September 22 on, the attacks began to be increasingly targeted and focusing on systems that already had vulnerabilities on them that had not been patched. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Greg. Greg, all yours.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sean.
The button press problem.
Don't worry. I also really appreciate the Chinese threat actors doing some vulnerability research for us. It's much appreciated. It's a great story. I think there's more to it as well. Sean's been able to give a good overview, but there's some great little details in there. There's a URL which will be in the show notes. There's a whole variety of articles and things that have been sort of covering this. But I mean, in general, it's been a 5-year process of identifying a concerted and persistent attempt to find vulnerabilities in our appliances. And it's been an interesting opportunity to watch that, and I guess as an organization, grow. And I guess a big key thing for why we talk about it as well is that a lot of vendors do not talk about this kind of topic. Actually, great, Sean, you're back as well.
I just came back to just say that, yes, please do read the multiple reports. We've gone into great technical detail. I was honored to be able to sort of conduct this report out the door after 5 years. My colleague, Andrew Brandt, worked very heavily with Ross, our CISO, to produce this report, and the CISO's team, our SecOps team, did a lot of work on this, carried on some very much cloak and dagger stuff going after the adversaries who were doing the R&D. It's a really interesting story from that perspective. But yes, it is an effort to put more transparency forward in the kind of things we have to deal with as a security vendor in terms of adversaries developing against our platform. And I think that the recent Palo Alto announcement also sort of plays into that. That state actors are always getting a hold of security vendors' hardware, network vendors' hardware, and developing exploits against them. And when somebody does threat research or exploit research in China, the Chinese government gets it first. And as we found, all of the exploit development, it was being used not just by one organization within China, but it was being used by multiple threat actors within China. It was tied to Volt Typhoon. It was tied to a number of other threat actors, including APT41, APT31, and we saw the activity was spread out over a whole bunch of different types of previously attributed threat actor activity. So we've got references to all the sources of this. The report also includes a list of what we have been able to find of active CVEs for firewall and other internet security devices that we feel are being exploited by various organizations, including state actors. So there's a GitHub with that data on it that's linked from the appendix to this report, which is the timeline.
Nice. Yeah, do take a look. It's really fascinating. And the previous head of our security operations team, so Ross McCutch is our CISO, and underneath he is the security operations team. But I remember when they first spotted this kind of behavior and developing the kind of detection capabilities. It gives you an idea about, I guess we often can't talk about, how are we actually monitoring those that are trying to breach our various technologies, products, services. It's a great idea or a great way to get an insight into what we actually do, get up behind the scenes that we can't often talk about. It took us 5 years before we could. But yeah, thanks, Sean. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the Sophos MDR Most Unwanted. This is a shareable image that we'll upload to the MDR community channel, and it's something that you can share with your end users to help them sort of step up their security awareness. And it's just something for you to be able to share and get the kind of knowledge and insights to them that's kind of topical. Feel free to steal it. What I'll do is I'll also put the raw text as well in the community post, but the image is there if you want to use it. But I appreciate not all of you want to send out an image. You might want to translate it. So yeah, by all means, just check the community post. It'll be in there. So there's two things I want to talk about. The first one is talking about that Windows plus R, the WinR, opening up the run dialog and entering commands. So this is talking about the threat vector of that there are these sort of fake capture phishing websites that are saying, oh, click this button and to do a verification, do this, this sequence of things on your keyboard, which is completely sketchy. Just tell them to don't do it, to contact the IT and security team and let them know they need to block this website. And then the other thing I thought we were talking about this kind of detritus of end-of-life products. For me, as a home user, this is something that I think is very important for myself to think about, but about the kind of edge device that I have. Now, while I sit here with a corporate device, and yes, we've got various technologies and VPNs and ZTNA. I'm not going to pretend that ZTNA is something I'm super au fait with, but end-of-life devices are a real risk. Having those in your house where your router is no longer getting security updates, this is something you need to pay attention to. What to go Google and so on. So yeah, that's the two things we'll be talking about in there. Feel free to take a look at it. Feel free to take the text. Feel free to do whatever you like with it. It's just to try and get knowledge out there. So we're now hitting the Q&A section. So I'm going to go look at the Q&A panel. We've had a fair few questions come through. Let me check what I want to do first. So first one I'm going to tackle, I'll tackle the ones I can tackle, and then I'm going to bring in my colleagues to answer some others. So the first one, someone says, what are we doing to stay ahead of threat actors using AI to circumvent the whole MDR platform? And I think this is an interesting topic in general. We saw that in one of those social engineering attacks earlier, the potential use of AI or large language models to generate a kind of a fake CV on a fake website, and also some kind of diffusion models to make maybe fake faces and so on, to make these kind of relatively realistic looking pages. But of course, through the use of LLMs, you can say, I'm going to target this, let's say it's a petrochemical company, and so let's make a CV for someone that looks really interesting that they would want to apply, to hire, for a role that's got loads of experience in petrochemical companies. And so this is not, I don't think this is like a pure technological thing. There's not like a single technology that's going to solve this. I'm going to say that this has been an area of concern really since LLMs really kind of popped up for us as an organization. You'll actually go and look through the kind of the Sophos News blog and look through the AI posts. There's countless kind of industry conference talks that our AI team have given. There's countless research papers that they published actually talking about this kind of offensive use of LLMs to generate, fake content. So it's something our AI team is very much investigating, paying attention to, publishing, and doing lots of research on. I can't say about anything that we kind of built or building around this, but that just gives you an answer, at least in that idea. Another question we've got, let's see, I'm not sure. Oh, you're saying, what about tools similar to EDR Silencer and others? I'm not sure I quite grok what you meant by that as a question. Feel free to expand upon it. Another question we've had, I'll actually bring in the team for this one because I see we've only got 10 minutes left. They said, have there been any sightings of the Avast anti-rootkit that Trellix reported on recently? It did have Sophos processes hard-coded in it that would attempt to close with kernel-level access, or would that be prevented by tamper protection? So I guess the Intel team, they've actually all been poking away at this behind the scenes to do some insights into that. If you want to come on stage, either Mark and or or Jordan? I know you both had a lot of insights into this. Do you want to jump into the stage? And let's give some thoughts on the kind of, I guess, vulnerable drivers in general. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Had a bit of audio issues. Unfortunately, couldn't hear you, Greg. In terms of this specific case with the Avast driver being abused, I read the same article, and when looking through past cases to see if I could find cases where that exact activity had happened, and I did. Actually, on 2 cases, MDR analysts responded to cases where that exact Avast driver was being abused. The threat actor was calling that exact same IO control number, and they were attacking or targeting the exact same list of security products. So I found 2 cases where incident responders responded to that back in 2022. Apparently, we haven't experienced this since. I can't quite explain why there's that discrepancy, why Trellix is just talking about this now. But yes, we did see that in the wild, but quite a bit in the past. Mark, you might have more details about what went down and what got detected. Take it away.
So I was able to just dig up one other one, actually, because that's been a while since we've seen that specific driver. So it's actually there was actually a service bat file that was instantiated as a service that went on to deploy that actual vulnerable driver. The nice part is that we have been monitoring for this specific abuse for quite some time, specifically under the Evade 40C detection, which is going to look for drivers specifically targeting our services and looking to pop them off and make sure that they're no longer available to protect things. So we have full and complete protections already against these vulnerable drivers at large. When we also see that specific driver in and of itself, because again, these are technically things that are benign. They're being leveraged for malicious activity, but this is another AV company vendor's tool. So we're not, as another AV company, just going to squash every instance that we see. We do detect it as a PUA, though, when we see it on disk. So there's a multi-set of protections that are in place currently looking to prevent this type of activity specifically. And it has been some time. That other IR that we had seen was way back in April of 2023. So, to echo Jordan, it's been some time since we've seen this specifically in our customer base. Maybe they've been scared off particularly of our protection mechanisms. I don't want to rattle their cages because I'm already busy. But it is nice to see that we haven't had that particular type of attack going on. So.
Sure. Yeah, and I think just talking to vulnerable drivers in general, sorry, I'll bring that thing back up on the screen. But yeah, vulnerable drivers in general, we've seen countless examples of these things over the years. There's that. Effectively, we always have to take a multi-layered approach to anything when it comes to prevention. So again, there's things like tamper protection, which kind of gives us a bit more of a, it kind of runs as well, we're already running a kernel, but it kind of adds some additional kind of controls around what can interact with us and does make it a lot harder. It takes down some of the various easy mechanisms to actually unhook us and so on. But again, there's no, it's no guarantee that's going to be perfect. And that's why there's a huge number of different behavioral detections. I was actually looking through the chat. So Mark and Jordan were actually posting various different insights, what behind the scenes where this question came in. And there's a huge number of different detection names, there's evasion detections, lots of behavioral detections and so on, so that we can try and identify these behaviors as they're happening, so that when the behavior sort of occurs, we can then kill the process before it can actually try and do anything. So it's, in general, vulnerable drivers are always going to be a thing. And I think, Sean, you've got a good insight. We've seen these things before.
Yeah, I was just going to interject that we've seen a bunch of, Sophos Labs and Sophos XApps have a lot of research on what we call EDR killers. And there's a lot of legitimate driver abuse being used in an attempt to take down security products, including ours. And we've been on top of this for a while, going back to at least 2022, when we started to see these things to begin with. We've been tracking this abuse of legitimate drivers to get kernel level hooks to attack security products. And there's one that we've been documenting, that we documented earlier this year, called AU Kill, which was commercially available on criminal marketplaces. You can take a look at that on news.sophos.com. There's some research on that Andreas did for us. we continue to see that sort of abuse of legitimate drivers that are vulnerable drivers, and of course the problem is with those drivers is that often they are attached to they're obviously attached to legitimate software products. That if we block them, we are blocking the functionality of legitimate products. So it makes it very difficult for us to block specifically the files that are being abused. We have to block the behavior instead. And that's all I've got to add about that. But do take a look at our research on EDR killers and to get a better idea of the scope of this type of behavior. And we will continue to do what we can do to block the behavior related to these things, as well as blocking the malicious code we see accessing those drivers.
Because the final point as well is that, so again, all of these kind of drivers have to be signed with a code signing certificates. And so what we also often see is that once they're sort of spotted in the wild, this kind of kicks off, like, I guess, an industry-wide response, and again, with Microsoft and so on, to revoke the code signing certificate for that binary. And this has happened time and time again. So in general, once they're kind of identified and they're seen to being abused and that there's a known vulnerability in a driver like this that can then be leveraged, often what we do see is that then the code signing certificate gets revoked. And so they're just part of the kind of core operating system kind of level security. It won't then execute that binary because the certificate has been revoked, and so the binary won't execute. So there's another layer there. But yeah, great question. We've got about 4 minutes left, so I'm just going to rattle off a couple of things. I'm going to summarize them. There's a few questions around the Windows Run, the Windows Run, so Win plus R, which I did also mention in the most unwanted. So yeah, there is actually a group policy template. I did a quick little bit of digging into this. So that's actually another good bit of advice, is if you don't want your users to be able to use Windows Run, you can find a GPO. I think it's under user configuration, admin templates, start menu, and taskbar. And you can just do remove run menu from start menu, even though it's a bit odd because I think it's probably a historical thing because it used to only be there, but now you can invoke it a few other ways. But yeah, there is a way to sort of, in a GPO, there's also a registry key you can set as well under Windows, under the sort of Explorer. Under when what was it, H key current user software, Microsoft Windows, current version policies, Explorer, you add a dword of no run set to 1, and then that sort of stops it from executing. So there are other ways you can actually control the use of the win run command, which might be worth thinking about. And another question was just around how to block PCA Lua, so the platform compatibility agent. So I think what we're going to do, we're actually going to probably raise a labs request to get an application control entry added for this, because that seems like a pretty obvious thing to sort of add to app control if labs are happy with adding a entry into app control for us. But I did also note there does seem to be a group policy template as well. So under computer configuration, administrative templates, Windows components, application compatibility, there is one for turn off program compatibility assistant. There's another another group policy as well under troubleshooting and diagnostics. But I just sort of do some digging up of turn off program compatibility agents, GPO, or compatibility assistants, GPO. You'll probably find it as well. And I guess the final point is just about when we're talking about Pacific Rim, that some products do come to end of life. There is Sophos.com. Actually, just Google Sophos products lifecycle. We do publish end of sale timelines for various products if it's been announced, if it hasn't been announced. And in general, I think for software, it's often around 2 to 3 years but from end of sale to end of life. I think hardware, I think we this is just running my eyes over the table, but it looks to be around from end of sale to end of life is a 3-year period. So you'll get emails and all sorts from your account managers letting you know this. So that product come end of life, but we do publish everything that's in there. A good page to keep sort of your eyes on. But yeah, I think that kind of brings us to a wrap. Just as always, if you want to check out, there's the Sophos MDR Threat Brief, which is a weekly threat intelligence post that we put on the community channel in the announcements section, where we cover various things that are happening week to week, especially things that we then can't bring up during the ThreatCast because it's only an hour, not a lot of time. So do check that out. Further reading is available here. It will be posted on the community channel. So don't panic. Do head over to the blog, be able to grab the references from there. But with that, I just want to say thank you for attending. Thank you for caring about what's going on in cybersecurity. Thank you for asking great questions and just being with us. I always say this, but sharing knowledge helps us stay one step ahead of threat actors by anticipating their movements and staying together as a whole. So thank you for that. And as always, stay watchful, stay vigilant. And if you have any concerns at all about strange behaviors going on in your estate, do not hesitate to contact Sophos MDR. All right, thanks so much. You take care.